Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. Over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So I've had quite a few requests in the past few months from people asking me to create a video on how to upload files or images to MongoDB. And I don't mean upload them to the file system and then just record the file name in the database, but upload the actual file to the database. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to build an application that allows us to do that. Now, if you know quite a bit about MongoDB, then you know that there's a restriction, there's a size limit on documents, okay? BSON documents. BSON is just basically the data types or data standard that MongoDB uses. It's very similar to JSON, it just has some additional data types and so on. But to get over this for files, you need to use something called gridfs, and it says right here it's a specification for storing and retrieving files that exceed that limit. So that's what we're going to do. To handle the uploading, we're going to use Multer, and I've done quite a few videos that used Multer. It's used for uploading files, and there's different storage engines you can use. For instance, there's an Amazon S3 engine if you wanted to use it with that. If you wanted local file uploads or Cloudinary, there's a lot of different basically modules that you can use, and gridfs is one of them. So this Multer gridfs storage. So we will be using this, and this will handle the basic uploads, and then we'll also be using this gridfs-stream, which allows us to easily stream files to and from MongoDB. So this is what we'll use to do things like display images that we upload, as well as delete files from the database. So we're going to basically implement both of these modules. Okay, as far as the database, I'm using MLab, which is a remote MongoDB database. If you want to use a local instance, that's absolutely fine. The only difference is the connection string. Okay, so this is our my connection string for this database. You can of course use a local one as well. All right. What else? I think that's it. So let's go ahead and let me just give you a demo real quick. So if I click browse, and by the way, we're using EJS for our template engine here and Bootstrap for our UI framework. So if I just upload, like, let's say this thumbnail for one of my recent videos and click submit, you'll see that that'll go ahead and upload. If I were to upload, let's say this script.txt file and submit, it'll just basically just give us the file name, and it's not the original file name. You want to make sure you change that because you don't want people uploading the files with the same name. So we're going to use the crypto module, which is a core Node.js module, to kind of create these unique file names. All right, now if I go to my database and I reload the collections, you'll see there's now an uploads.files and an uploads.chunks. Now uploads.chunks is basically makes it able for us to upload larger files, and there's nothing in here that we're really going to need. You can see binary data. There's nothing in here we're really going to need for our application. What we're interested in is the files, the file info itself, which you can see we have the file name, the generated file name, the type, this is the image, this one you can see is the text, the date, the chunk size, the length, all that stuff, the ID. So each one has its own unique ID. So you can see that those were uploaded, and I can also delete. So if I go ahead and delete this one, you can see it's gone, and if I reload my database, it's gone as well. So I'm going to show you how to build this little application, and obviously the application itself is nothing special. It's nothing you would deploy, but it's going to give you insight on how to do this, so that you can do this in your projects. And it's really good for platforms where you may not be able to access the file system and upload them directly, so you could upload them to your database. Alright, so that's what we'll be building. Hopefully you enjoy it, and let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so the very first thing you want to do is make sure you actually have a MongoDB instance to work with. And you can install MongoDB locally and use that. That's absolutely fine. Or you can do what I'm doing and use MLab, which is a remote deployment. Okay, so it's free to sign up. It's free to use the Sandbox account. So what you need to do is just sign up and then log in, and you'll see a screen like this. I already have 2 databases here. You won't see these if you just signed up, but you just want to click on Create New. And you can choose your cloud provider. We're going to choose the free Amazon Web Services Sandbox, and we're going to choose, we're just going to click Continue, and then I'm going to choose US East for my location and continue, and then give it a name. So I'm just going to call this Mongo Uploads, and then click Continue. And it's just going to give us a kind of a summary, and we'll click Submit, and that should set up everything. And once this turns into a green check, it should be okay, and we'll click on it. And then the last thing we need to do is just create a user. Okay, I don't mean your MLab account user, I mean a user for the database. So you want to click on this tab and then just click Add Database User. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used this before. I'm just going to use Brad for my username and the password for this database. Alright, so now that should be all set. We don't have any collections. That's absolutely fine. Those will get created as we build our application. Alright, so now that that's set up, we're going to hop over to VS Code, and I just have a completely empty folder called Mongo Uploads, and this is where we're going to create the application. So first thing we'll do is run npm init and create our package.json file. I'm going to go through this here. Description, I'm just going to say simple app to upload files to MongoDB, and I'm going to use app.js as my entry point, and then just go through the rest. Alright, so now we have our package.json file. Now there's quite a few dependencies we're going to be using, so I figure we just get it all out of the way and install them all. So let's do npm I or install, and we want Express. We want EJS as our template engine. We want body parser for the form. We want, what else? Mongoose to connect to our database. Multer for the uploads. We also need the Multer gridfs. So it's actually Multer dash gridfs dash storage. Yeah, and then we also want the gridfs-stream. We also want a module called method override. And the reason for that is because I want to be able to make a delete request without making an AJAX call. I want to be able to do it through a form, and this module allows us to do that. All right, so I think that should be it for our regular dependencies. So let's go ahead and run that. And those should all get added to our package.json file. Good. And then there's one more that I want to add as a dev dependency, and that's nodemon, so that we don't have to keep restarting our server and it'll just constantly watch. So we want to do -- save -dev and nodemon. All right, and we're going to just add a couple scripts in a minute here once this is done. Alright, so that's added as a dev dependency. So let's go up to scripts and let's get rid of the test. We're not going to use that. And let's add a start script. And basically this is just going to be to start it regularly. So we'll say node app.js. And let's also add a dev script that uses nodemon. And that's what we'll be using. So it'll be nodemon app.js. Alright, so we'll save that, and that should be it for our package.json. So next thing to do is create our app.js file. And this is pretty much where we'll be doing everything except the view. We're going to have one index view, which will be that page you saw with the form. So before we get into like the Mongo and the gridfs, I just want to create a basic Express server that runs with a view. So let's bring in Express. So we want to say require Express. Let's also, actually that's fine for now, we'll do that, and then we'll just initialize our app variable with Express. All right, and then let's set our view engine. So we're going to say app.set, and we want to set the view engine. EJS is one of the easiest, or the easiest view engine to set up. And by the way, if you wanted to use React or something on the front end and use this as a Multer and all this stuff, you can still do that. I'm just using EJS because it's quick. And this isn't a front end video. This isn't a React video. Next thing we'll do here is let's create our route. So we'll say app.get, and it's just going to be the /, so the index route, and we'll use an arrow function here, and we'll include our request and response, and we're going to res.render a view, and we want to render the index view, okay, which will be the only one we have. And then let's put our port into a variable. We'll do 5000, and then what we'll do is say app.listen, listen on that port, and then we can put in a callback or an arrow function in this case, and let's just console.log, and I'm going to put some backticks in here, and I'll say server started on port. We'll use our template literal expression syntax, and we'll just put in the port number. Alright, so we'll save that, and then we'll create a folder called views. Now automatically EJS is going to know that it's going to look for this index view inside of this folder. So let's create a file called index.ejs, and in here we'll use Emmet to put in some head body tags. And let's see, we'll go ahead and change the title to Mongo file uploads, and let's just put an H1 in here for now, and we'll say Mongo file uploads. Alright, so we should be able to start the server. Let's go ahead and run npm run dev, and that should start up NodeMon. Alright, so server started on 5000. Let's check it out. And there we go. So it's loading up our view. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is just finish up the view. So we're going to use Bootstrap. So I'm going to go to getbootstrap.com, get started, and let's grab the CSS CDN here, put that in the head, and then we'll grab the three script tags, and we'll put that right above the ending body tag. Alright, so we'll save that, and you'll see the font will change. And then what I want to do is just add, I want to use a little bit of the grid system here. So let's see, in the body tag we're going to put a container first, and then a row, and then we're going to do a 6-column div, so call md6. But I also want to add another class here because I want to push it to the middle, so it's going to be m-auto for margin auto. And then we can take this h1 right here, and we can move that up. And let's add a couple classes on here, such as text center. I also want to do display-4, and then my-4, which is just margin on the top and bottom, the y-axis. Alright, so if I save that and reload, it should look like that. Make that a little smaller. And then underneath the H1 is where our form will go. So let's put in a form here, and let's give it an action of /upload. Okay, it's going to also be a post request, so we'll give it a method of post. And then let's also give it an enc type, because if you're going to use a file field, then you need to do enc type equals multi-part form data. Okay, I'm sure you guys know that. Alright, and then inside here we're going to use a little bit of Bootstrap, and we're going to have a class of custom-file. I'm also going to do a class of mb-3, which is just margin bottom. And then the input will go in here. This will be type file. The name I'm going to call file. The ID I'll call file, and I'm also going to give it a class of custom-file-input. All right, and then under that we'll have a label. Whoops, we'll have a label for file. And let's see, we're also going to have a class of custom-file label. And in here we'll just say choose file. All right, and then finally under this div we just want to put our submit, so we'll say input type submit, value submit, and then we'll give it a couple button classes. Do btn block, make it stretch all the way across, and that's it. So let's save and reload, and there we go. So that looks pretty good. All right, and I know that I don't have to do this stuff. It would be a quicker tutorial without it, but I like to make things neat and just, you know, make it something worth something. So I don't know, hopefully you guys can appreciate that, even though it makes it a little longer. All right, so we have our basic view. Now what I want to do is start to implement the MongoDB stuff. So we're going to bring in a couple things up here. Let's bring in the path module, which is just a core Node.js module. So path. I'm also going to bring in crypto, which we're going to use later on to generate the file names. And that's also a core Node.js module. Let's bring in Mongoose. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used Mongoose. It's basically an ORM to interact with MongoDB. And we're not going to create any models or anything. We're actually using the gridfs-stream to do basically like the CRUD app operations. All right, so let's also bring in Multer. We want to bring in, let's bring in the Multer gridfs. So I'm going to call this gridfs storage and set it to multer-gridfs-storage. All right, and then we also want to bring in the gridfs stream, and we're going to just call this grid. All right, let's see what else. One more thing, we want to bring in method override. So lowercase method override. All right, so that's everything that we need to bring in, I believe. Now what we're going to do is just add a couple of things of middleware. So body parser, I didn't bring that in. All right. So let's see, middleware, we're going to say app.use, and we want body parser.json. That's a function. And then we have one more piece of middleware for method override. So we're going to say app.use method override, and we just want to pass into this a string of underscore method, and that's just basically telling it that we want to use a query string when we create our form in order to make a delete request. All right, so now that that's done, let's create a URI for our MongoDB not installation, but instance. So we'll say Mongo URI equals, and then we're going to go ahead and grab this string here. Of course, if you're using local MongoDB, it'll be like MongoDB / localhost, whatever you want to call your database. But if you're using MLab, you want to paste that in, and you want to just replace the user and password. And I just used Brad for both. Okay, so now that we have that, let me see, I'm just going to close this up, make this a little bigger. Now we're going to create our Mongo connection. So to do that, we'll say const, we'll call this con, set it to mongoose dot create connection, and then this takes in the URI like that. All right. Now I just want to initialize a variable for the stream, for the gridfs stream. So it's going to be called GFS. So I'll say let GFS just to initialize it. And then what we need to do is we need to, I'll actually show you, it's in the documentation for gridfs stream, I believe. It gives you a bunch of examples if you're using the standard MongoDB driver, but we're not. We're using Mongoose. So if we go down to the bottom, it says using with Mongoose. We basically want to take our connection variable, which we already created, and call .once and then pass in open. So basically when our database is open, when it's loaded, we want to set that GFS variable to grid, which, as you can see up here, is our gridfs stream. All right, we want to pass these things in. So I'm just going to grab that, I guess. I'll just copy it. And we'll paste that in. All right, and let's just change up some things here. I don't want to use var. Actually, I don't want to use anything because I already initialized it right here. So we don't want to declare it again. And then I also don't want to use a callback. I want to use an arrow function. Just preference. And then what we want to do is take the GFS and we want to do .collection, and we want to specify what we want to use for a collection name, and I'm going to use uploads. Remember we saw uploads.chunks and uploads.files in our database. This is what determines that. All right, so now that we did that, let's see. So we basically initialized our stream. Now what we want to do is create our storage engine or storage object, and we can look at the documentation for Multer gridfs storage. And if we go down here, there's some basic setup here, but it's not really what we want. We want more freedom to be able to create our file name with the extension. So if we go all the way down to this right here, see how they're creating a storage variable, and they're using crypto to basically generate that long string, and then they're passing on the extension name, so they actually have something .jpeg or whatever as the file name. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to grab this block of code and we're going to paste that in here, and we're going to refactor it a little bit. For one thing, let's see, where are we? They have an error here. They add an extra parenthesis. So right here, see where this red line is? That actually shouldn't be there. So we're going to delete that. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use const right here instead of var. And then we're going to also change the URL right here to our own. Remember, we have that variable of Mongo URI, so we'll pass that in. And then that should be all we need to do here. And what it's doing is it's returning a promise, and we're using crypto.randomBytes. Okay, there's a method with this module called randomBytes, and you can see right here it's used to generate names, and it's going to generate that long string. Okay, I think it's 16 characters. I think that's what that is. I haven't used this crypto too much. If there's an error, we're going to use the promise rejector and just throw the error. If not, then we're going to create the file name with the extension. We're going to have an object called file info with the file name along with the bucket name. The bucket name should match the collection name. And then we're going to resolve the promise with that file info. Okay, and then we're going to just create a variable called upload, set it to Multer, and pass in the storage engine. Okay, So what that allows us to do now is allows us to make our post route. Okay, remember we're submitting our form to /upload, and we can then use this upload variable as our middleware so that it actually uploads to the database. All right, let's put some comments here. Let's say route, this is get slash, and description, we'll just say loads form. Okay, and then we're going to have a route of post to upload, and the description will say uploads file to DB. All right, so let's say app.post, because it's going to be a post request, and it's going to be to /upload. Request response. Now this is where we need to put in our middleware. So right in the middle of the route and the arrow function, we're going to take that upload variable and just call .single. And put a comma here. Now we're using single because we're just uploading a single file. With Multer, you can actually upload multiple files as an array, but we're not doing that. It's just one file at a time. Now inside here, you want to pass in the name that you use for the file field. So in our form, you can see for the file, I use the name file. If this was like my file or image or something like that, that's what you would put in here, avatar or something like that. All right, and then once that is uploaded, let's do a res.json just to see what we get back. So I'll pass in file, and we should be able to get request.file, and that'll give us the info. All right, so let's try it. Let's save, and let's go to our form here and reload. And let's grab something. I'll grab this image and submit. And there we go. So this is the request.file we're looking at. It has a field name, file, original name, the encoding, the MIME type, the ID. So we could do what we want with this. This is the file name right here that was generated. This string right here, this long string, was generated through the crypto.random bytes right here. So we basically took control and said we want to name it this way. If we wanted to use like a date or somehow implement the timestamp or something like that, we could name it however we want. But I think that that's fine. Gives us the bucket name, all that stuff. All right, now once we upload our file, actually let's check the database. That's a good idea. So if I reload, there it is. So it had 2 chunks. Okay, it takes up 2 chunks, but 1 file. And if we look at the file, it has all that stuff in it. Okay, file name right here, which is basically the most important, that and the content type for what we're doing anyway. And now we're able to upload images. All right, so if you just asked me how do I upload an image, then we're done, but we're not, because I want to build something a little more substantial. So instead of returning the JSON once we upload, I just want to redirect back to the home page. So we'll say res, actually I'll just comment that out, and then we'll say res.redirect back to /. All right, so let's go back to the home page, and now if I were to upload that script file, submit, and it's just going to redirect us back. Okay, it's not going to show anything down here yet. We haven't done anything like that yet. But if I reload, now that file has been uploaded as well. Now before we get to showing the images here, I want to create kind of an API where we can go to like /files and then see an array of all the files in our database, or /files/ID or file name, and see all the information of that particular file. So let's create a couple more routes. So we'll say route, and this is going to be a GET request to /files and let's say description, display all files in JSON. All right, so we'll say app.get, and we're going to be using gridfs-stream for this. So let's say files, request response, and let's see. So in here, we want to first check to see if the files exist. Well, actually, no. First, we need to find the files. So we can kind of use gridfs-stream like we would Mongoose, like we would a Mongoose model. So we'll say gfs.find, and we want to turn this into an array. So we're going to say toArray, and that's going to take in a callback. I'm going to use an arrow function, and toArray will take in an error if there is one, and then files. It'll return the files for us, and then we'll check to see if any files exist. So we'll say check if files. So we'll say if not files, or the files dot length is equal to 0, then we don't need a comment here. Then we'll just say return, let's say res.status, and I want to send a 404 status, and then .json, and in here we'll just pass in an object, and we'll send an error and say no files exist. Okay, and then we'll go after that if statement, which means that files do exist, and then we just want to return res.json, and I'm just going to send the files array. All right, so let's save that, and then if we go to localhost 5000/files, gfs.find is not a function. Oh, I'm sorry, it's gfs.files.find. And there we go. So now we have an array of our files. Okay, and we have 2 files in there. So you could use this as just a back-end API. Now I also want to just be able to go to files / and then a file name and get just a single object, just a single file. So let's do that next. So I'm going to copy this whole thing, this whole route, and let's say get files / and I mean we could use the ID, but I think, let's see, should we use the ID? I'm going to do it for the image as well, so it actually gets the image path. But we're going to use a different route. We're going to use /image for that. So I think, yeah, we will use the file name here. So let's go down here and say files / file name. And then what we want to do is, instead of find, we want to use find1 and pass in here an object. We want to say where file name is equal to request.params.filename. So this will get the file name from the URL, okay, from here. And then we don't want the toArray, so we can actually get rid of all of this whole toArray, and then this just takes a second parameter of a function, and this is going to give us an error if there is one, and then just the file itself, the one file. And then we can check for the file the same way we did here. So I'll copy that, except it's going to be file, not files. And then we'll just say no file exists. Okay, and then after that we'll say file exists, and we'll return res.json, and let's just pass in that single file. All right, so now let's go ahead and grab one of these file names. So this one right here, this JPEG, and we'll copy that and we'll say file / that, and there we go. It gives us the single object with that file. Now if I throw another character in here, we know that this doesn't exist. Let's go ahead and search for that. We get an error, no file exists. All right, now what I want to do is I want to have a route for images where we can go to images / and then the file name, and it'll actually display the image, not just the data like this. So for that, we actually have to use something called read-stream from gridfs-stream, which is let's see, right here, create read-stream. So we want to do something like this, and that'll allow us to output the image. So let's create a new route. I'm actually going to copy the one we just did and paste that in. So this will be get, we'll say get image, and then the file name, description, display image. I forgot the description here, so this should be display single file object. All right, so let's change this to image, and again we're going to just find one. We're going to find it by the file name. This is all the same. We're going to keep this check here to make sure it exists. But then what I want to do is I want to check to make sure it's an image, that the content type is either image JPEG or let's say image PNG. So we'll say check if image. And I mean, there's better ways to do this, but I'm just going to do it the easiest way that I can think of, and that's just to see if file dot content type, because we can get that, as you can see right here, content type. Let's check to see if it's equal to image / JPEG, or file dot content type is equal to image / PNG. All right, I'll save that. So if it is, then we want to read the output or the stream image or the image. So we'll just say read output to browser. And if we look at the documentation for the stream, you'll see that there's this create read stream. This is what we want to do. We basically just want these two lines right here. Okay, so let's first of all change this to const, and then read stream equals gfs.createReadStream, and then the option I'm going to pass in is going to be the file name. So file dot file name, and then pass this in. Now this is going to be res, not response, because we're pertaining to this right here. All right, and then let's do an else. So if it's not an image, then we'll just do res.status 404.json, and let's pass along here an error, and we'll just say not an image. All right, so let's save that and let's see if that works. So we'll go to let's grab this file name here that we know exists in the database and is an image, and we'll pass that here, but we don't want files, we want the route image, okay, because that's what we used right here. So let's try that out, and there it is. So there's the image. Now if we pass in let's see, in our database we have a text file. Let's take that, which doesn't have the content type that matches PNG or JPEG, so it should just give us the error. Let's try it. There we go, not an image. All right, so now what I want to do is take care of displaying the images or displaying the files in our view. So right here I want them to display underneath our form. So we're going to go back up to the route right here, get slash, and we're going to do a couple things here. We want to find all the images, and I guess we could just copy it from slash files where we already did this find.toArray. So we just want to get that. Let's see, the toArray ends right here. I'm just going to grab that whole thing. And let's go back up here and we'll just replace this. So it's going to find the files, and we want to check to see if they're images. All right, so after this, okay, we're going to check to see if there's any files, except we're not returning JSON. If there is no files, then we want to res.render index, and we want to pass along an object with files false. Okay, else, if there are files in the database, we first want to map through them, and we want to decide which ones are images and which ones are not, because remember, if they're images, we want to display them. So we can use map for that, which is a high order array function. So we'll do files.map. Okay, so we're going to map through them. Map takes in a callback or an arrow function. Actually, it's just one parameter, so we don't need extra parentheses. So we'll say file, and in here I'm just going to do a test, just like we did below, to see if file.content type is equal to what is it, image/JPEG, or content type is equal to image /PNG. So if that's true, what I'm going to do is set a new value onto the file object called isImage, and we're going to set that to true. Else, we're going to set file.isImage to false. All right, and then finally we're going to render the index. I'll just copy this. So we want to go outside of the map, which ends right here, and just render that, but instead of rendering false, we want to render files. Okay, which now each one will now have this isImage because we used map. Map is very powerful. I love this friggin' function. All right, so let's try it. We'll save. Well, actually, we can't try it yet because we haven't added the EJS markup so that this will actually do anything or show anything. So let's go to our index EJS file, and let's go under. Let's see. Let's go under the form. I'm going to put an HR here. And then we want to do a couple we actually want to do a few things. We want to first check to see if files is true or false. Remember, if no files are found, then this files value will be false. So EJS syntax, if you guys have never used it, is like this. So it's going to be an angle bracket, a %, and we can put JavaScript in here. We can say if files, open curly brace, and then close this line like that. All right, and then we want an else. So again, EJS syntax else. Actually, it should be a else. EJS, I really like. It's really convenient, but it is a little bit ugly. Let's see. So this is just going to be ending it like that. All right, so if files, actually let's do the else first. So if there's no files, then we'll just put a paragraph and we'll say no files to show. Okay, but if there are files found, then we want to loop through them. So again, we're going to use EJS syntax and say files, and we can use a for each loop here. So files.forEach. Let's see, files for each, and then this actually takes in, let's close this off, this takes in a callback function like that, and actually, you know what, this part we need to cut off and put down here. Alright, so we're going to loop through and then pass into the callback just file. And now I'm going to put everything inside of a bootstrap card. So I'm going to say a class of card. Let's also do a class of card body and a class of margin bottom 3. Alright, now in here is where we want to check to see if it's an image, because if it's an image, we want to put it inside of an image tag. If not, we just want to display the file name. So again, we'll use our EJS and use if, and we'll say if file, if the current iteration, the current file is image is true, this isn't the easiest stuff to type, so I apologize if it's kind of slow. And then down here, we want to do an else. And then we want to end it. Alright, so if it's an image, then let's put in an image tag. And the source will be image slash, remember the route, so we can go to image slash and then the file name. So the file name is going to be dynamic, so we'll use EJS. Now if we're just outputting a single variable, we need to put in an equal sign here. And then we can say file.filename and close that off. Alright, if it's not an image, then we're simply going to put in file.filename like that. Alright, so let's try it. We'll save. Now I'm using Prettier, which just kind of messed everything up for us. Didn't make it, it made it uglier, but whatever, that's fine. So let's see, something's going wrong here. It's showing the text title can't set headers after they're sent. Alright, so something's going on here. Let's see. 76, return JSON files. Return res.json. Oh, this shouldn't even be here. This is left over from what we copied. Alright, let's try that. Alright, now it's working, but the image looks a little messed up. So what I'm going to do is just add a style tag in here, up in the head. And let's just say for all images, we'll say width 100%. There we go. Alright, so we got our image and we have our text file name. And you could link this to the actual file if you wanted to. But we're running out of time here. This is getting wicked long. Next thing I want to do is the delete. Now remember we used that we installed the method override. That's going to allow us to use a form to use it as a delete button that will make an actual delete request. So I'm going to go down, let's see, so inside the card right above the ending div, because it doesn't matter if it's an image or not. And we're going to put in a form, and the action is going to be /files/ and then we want the file ID. Okay, and we can get that. Wait, do we want the ID or the name? Let's see. Yeah, we want the file ID. I think we could use the file name, but we're going to use the ID. And we can get that using EJS. So we're going to say % equals, and let's do file dot underscore ID. Okay, and then we're going to put method post, but it's not actually going to be a post request. We're using method override, and I'll show you how we do that. We do that by adding on a query string right here. So we'll say question mark and then underscore method equals delete, because we really want it to be a delete request. All right, and then all this form is going to have is a button. We'll give it a class of btn. Let's do btn dash danger, btn dash block, and margin top 4. All right, and we'll say delete. So let's save that. Okay, now we have our delete buttons, and you can see it's actually making a delete request because of this query right here. So let's go back to our app.js and let's handle that delete request. So down at the bottom, let's say route is going to be delete slash files slash ID, and we'll put a description and we'll say delete file. Okay, so app.delete, and in here it's going to be slash files slash :ID, and let's say request response. And in here, what we want to do now is use our gridfs-stream, and we can use remove. So right here, removing files, gfs.remove, pass in options which can be an ID or a file name, okay, or at least an ID or a file name. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say GFS. So you can see we're using the gridfs file stream kind of like you would use a Mongoose model. So let's say GFS remove, and then pass in an object. Whoops. And we'll say where underscore ID is equal to request.params.id. Now, one thing there they don't show you in the documentation is you also need to include the collection in root. So we need to say root and then uploads. All right, that kind of stumped me for a while. And then put a function here, and this will actually give us error and grid store. Okay, we don't need the grid store for anything, but it does give it to us, and we'll check for an error. And if there's an error, we'll go ahead and return 404.json. Let's do error, and we'll just pass that error value. All right, if not, then we just want to redirect. And that's it. So hopefully that works. Let's go ahead and reload, and let's go to our text file here and click delete, and there it goes. And now if we check our database, reload, that text file is now gone. All right, so our application is now complete. I would say our application and our API, because we can also go to, not image, but files and see our files, and we can do /file name. So hopefully this gives you guys some insight on how to do this and how you could implement it into your own applications. You might not do all of this stuff. You may just do the simple upload, but I wanted to go a little more in depth and kind of give you some insight on how to use both of the Multer gridfs and the gridfs-stream, so that you can kind of manipulate your file streams. And you have other stuff here too, like write streams, create write streams, other stuff as well. So you may want to look more into it. But that's going to be it, guys. Sorry that this video was so long. It's kind of late and my brain's kind of thinking a little bit slow. But if you liked it, please leave it a like. And if you're not subscribed and you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. And that's it. Thanks. Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. If you're serious about landing a career in tech but lack the formal education or background, Coding Dojo will get you there in no time. With over 3,000 graduates to date, over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year at tech firms of all sizes, from companies like Google to local startups. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below.